Thanks for carving out the time, everyone, just to be here for a couple minutes. Marc, Padron, Director of Sales of Engauge Workforce Solutions. Really appreciate everyone carving out the time just to be here and learn about how a diverse workforce can really separate you as an employer in today's world. There's going to have some really key learnings from the three of us here on my left. Your right, going from my left here, Katie Malnight Meisinger, and then we have Marc Dreikosen, and I always mispronounce your name, Marc, I really apologize. And then James Milroy. We're going to have some really great stories to share, but first I would like Katie to go through the story just so that we can highlight how this will set the stage for the next 40 minutes, open discussion. We want to have some questions here as well. Just appreciate everyone carving out the time.
Yep, and let me know, do you guys want me to use a microphone or can you hear me just fine? Yes? Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay. So just to set the stage a little bit, I think it's really important that we understand the changing demographics. So as everyone is very, very well aware, especially in the manufacturing space, the baby boomers are starting to leave the workforce, and there's a lot of companies that are starting to feel that. Unfortunately, if you look at the US birth rate, it's also dropping below the replacement rate, so we're gonna start having a harder time finding people. By 2030, deaths will outpace births in the US, making immigration the primary driver of growth, which is why trying to tap into diverse workforces is going to become more and more important over the next decade. The labor participation rate is dropping as well, and specifically the labor force participation rate of prime age men. And so for a lot of those traditionally highly technical roles that only men would fill, we're going to have to look in different places. So when we look at options to address future workforce shortages, you obviously have automation or AI, but as many people are finding out with AI, there's always a human element that is involved in those processes. I think, Marc, you can kind of cover where you see automation fitting best and where people are more effective.
Yeah, thanks. So from Husco and our use of automation, we have heavily automated pieces of equipment, but it's really only as good as the people that program it and then are there to support it, right? So if I have a fully automated production line, I'm reliant on an operator still staffing the line, getting materials to and from the line, fixing robots and trying to address faults and things. And I mean, there's case studies on lights out manufacturing and things, but that's such a far cry from what we typically will use for automation, and there's many other barriers there. So the use of a workforce is still is highly necessary.
Yep. So option number 2 is pay more, which obviously increases your cost structure quite a bit. It attracts a certain type of personality that is going to be geared towards pay raises. So it can ultimately result in a pay war in terms of you are attracting people who are their primary motivation is money. And so understand that if your competitor approaches them and can offer them more money, there's a high likelihood that they're at least going to consider it. And so you have to do quite a bit to differentiate yourself in other areas to be able to try to retain that talent if you are just paying more. You can outsource, which would obviously simplify your production process. But you must monitor supplier quality, and you obviously give up control of your processes, which a lot of manufacturers are not comfortable doing with certain products that they're manufacturing. And then last but not least, you can broaden your candidate funnel. So non-English speakers and refugees, neurodivergent and folks with disabilities, as well as second chance associates, which are folks that have gone to prison at some point and are trying to make a better life for themselves. Some common misconceptions around diversity populations, I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard them. They will basically leave for the next opportunity. What if they don't understand safety or instructions? How do I get through an audit? All of those types of concerns we're really gonna try to dive into in the panel today to understand how you can actually push back when you get pushbacks on bringing people on board. And so the main reasons to diversify your workforce. So many, obviously one of the main pain points in manufacturers, especially those that run multiple shifts, are the off shifts. You can normally staff first shift well, you normally have a wait list on second and third shift for people that wanna move on first shift. but you really struggle to fill the off shifts. One of the beautiful things about the diversity populations, and especially the diversity populations that are in the Milwaukee area, is that a lot of them prefer second and third shift. And so speaking from the experience at Rely, the contract manufacturer that I work at, we have a significant Burmese, Karen, Chin, Rohingya population, and all of those folks prefer second shift. And so anytime we have helped companies bring on those populations to stabilize second and third shift, they end up having wait lists for those shifts and actually end up struggling more on first shift. They have a respect for hierarchy and rules. It's something that dawns on me a lot when I am talking to Gen Zers, especially, where you're like, I feel like I'm trying to convince you that you should do what I'm actually asking you to do, and it doesn't feel like it used to be this hard. You do not get that with immigrants. They understand and have a respect for hierarchy and are going to do it exactly how you said it, almost to a fault. And so if you're really annoyed by having to convince people, that's another good reason to do it. They have an incredibly strong work ethic and reliability. There was one time where the lights went out at our facility, and normally everyone goes, okay, well, everyone must have left and went on a smoke break. No, literally our associates picked up their what they were working on and went over to the windows and kept working because they cared that much about what they're doing. You don't get that in a lot of the traditional workforce. Reduced training requirements if you pick the right population. One of the companies that we helped bring on a population to is a company that utilizes a lot of brazing. And so they were opening up a second shift. It's 45 minutes outside of Milwaukee, and we're kind of panicking about how they were going to find the brazers. Well, what we did is we helped them tap into the Rohingya population that has heavy welding experience from Malaysia, and they were able to seamlessly become a part of the team and had a really low training barrier because they already had the skill sets. Control costs by breaking out of the pay war with your competitors. Like I said before, if you give these folks opportunities and you treat them with respect, they're going to become incredibly loyal to your organization. They don't care as much about pay, like obviously pay matters to everyone. They care more about being respected, having a good work environment, feeling like they're valued, and it's all the things you can build around that's going to allow you to actually have a team that's stable that you can complement with some other folks. They have significantly higher retention rates. We will touch on a couple actual case studies in the next few slides that will go through that. You can develop a proprietary talent pool that is hard for competitors to poach. So if you put the effort in to make picture work instructions, put a lot of those standards in place, your competitors just can't poach your people because they don't have the structure and infrastructure to support that. And so you become a lot likely or less likely to have people poaching your talent that you've poured a lot of resources, time, and energy training. And then the last is a lot of these associates often qualify for WOTC, the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, so it also has a financial benefit. So just a couple case studies that we wanted to cover. So this is a piece of equipment that we are making hidden lid switches for washing machines out of our facility. And so we have a big neurodivergent population, and one of the associates, we had to adjust that capping, or that semi-automated capping station to have a marker to guide them to where they put it into the actual capping station. That ended up reducing the cycle time of the entire team because everyone could actually now locate the part much more effectively by 54%. It also allowed us to run the line with one less person, which obviously saved a lot of cost and allowed us to be more aggressive on the pricing front. And then it reduced the direct labor cost by 25% on the line. So this is from an experience that actually he and I were at the same company, James and I. It's a plastic manufacturer that's just outside of Milwaukee. And so at the time, we were struggling tremendously to fill our third shift. We had a really strong Burmese population on second shift, which was James's shift. and we were trying to figure out ways to bring on and address the third shift problems, because we literally were having to shut down presses every single night when third shift started up, and then the burden that it put on first shift to have to start up so many different presses, it was just really not going to work financially. And so what we did is we brought on the Burmese Rohingya population. I ended up spending multiple days on third shift to get the team to embrace that population. And as you can see, they not only allowed us to significantly reduce the actual openings that we had, but we retained those people. And so fundamentally, we ended up having a much harder time filling the first shift orders than we ever did on first and second. We ended up having a wait list of, we started with 50 openings, and we ended up having a wait list of 20 people on third, just because we embraced that population. And what was amazing is I got a lot of pushback initially from the technical group, because obviously third shift always tends to have a chip on their shoulder, because they're like, you don't have resources, I don't have the engineers, I don't have all of the support structure in place. And so trying to convince them that this was going to be worth their time was really important. Well, flash forward to them finally having people that actually appreciated having a job, that were happy to be there, that were smiling, that were not like, this sucks, I hate this job, I don't want to be here. They ended up wanting to only have that population on third shift, because it made that much of a difference culturally, and they actually ended up interacting with first and second shift better, because they didn't feel like they were under-resourced as significantly as they had previously. Diversity, starting on second shift, so this is that company that I was talking about that we brought the Rohingya population with brazing. When we brought this population, you can see how quickly their productivity increased. And they ended up having actually second shift outperform first shift within 2 weeks of starting, because we had folks that had been doing this in factories in Malaysia for a regular amount of time, so the training barrier was that low. And they actually, there were a couple people that actually were making bets that the group was not going to make it and all of this, and then 2 weeks later when they started outperforming first shift, there was a very different tune that was happening. It also significantly reduced the turnover from 55% to 20%. Last but not least, this kind of also reinforces the attendance piece. So this is a large distributor of holiday and seasonal stuff. And so what we brought on is we brought on 75% Spanish-speaking population, and they did not have the infrastructure from a supervisor perspective to really support that with 2 of 15 supervisors speaking Spanish. But what we did is we focused on bringing on enough bilingual Spanish speakers that were able to translate and be trainers, and it was great because we didn't actually, they didn't actually pick those people because they were bilingual. It's because they were performing that well that they earned the right to actually be those trainers for the season. We had literally 72 of the 90 associates have perfect attendance for the entire month of January in the state of Wisconsin. I don't know a lot of other populations that you can say would do that. The other thing is they 100% e-verified, so there are Spanish-speaking populations. There's a very large Spanish-speaking population that does e-verify. So this is all great, I'm sure, but how do we actually go down that road to start bringing people on? So focus on identifying the best group aligned to your production process. I oftentimes, so the African population has had a hard time coming into the Wisconsin area because we have so many food and bev manufacturers. And so people will automatically be like, well, okay, let me put them in a frozen manufacturing environment. They're Africans, they've come from Africa, it's really hot. So they don't wanna be around a frozen environment. And so it's a good way to plug a Band-Aid on something. It's not a good way to build your workforce around it, because those people are ultimately going to go somewhere else where they can be in an environment that's more likely to what they are used to. And so you just really want to be specific about who you choose. Find a partner who understands that group. One of the things that I always try to reinforce is you do not need to do this by yourself, and I strongly don't recommend that you do it by yourself. There's lots of community partners that will come in and help you for free. help bring on different populations. When we started bringing on the folks with disabilities, there's obviously a lot of governmental resources that you need to have fall in line. If you work with the right community partner, they will do all of that for you, and you will just be able to focus on getting them embedded in your organization, making sure they're trained appropriately, and making sure they're embraced. Document and standardize your processes. This is critical. And I think it's a good way to force your production teams to actually have documented, standardized practices. We do picture work instructions for everything we do, and that's why we're able to have 8 different languages in our facility and still be ISO certified, because it's like souped up IKEA instructions. Anyone could do it regardless of if they speak the language or not. The other thing I always try to reinforce is that manufacturing has a language of its own. Not a lot of people who have not come from manufacturing are going to walk in and know exactly what all the terminology means. So you're really just training people on terminology regardless of if they speak English or not. And so I don't think it's as much of a barrier as people tend to think it is. I always strongly suggest that you meet with the production team first without HR, and this is a critical step because you want to allow them to you want to allow them to ask their highly non-PC questions without being worried that they're going to get in trouble. Because if you don't, they're going to be thinking those things, and they're going to have misconceptions about those populations, and it's going to cause them to interact differently. Where we've done this and we've brought the supervisors in and we've explained to them that we're not doing this just because this is a cheaper option or it's an option we're trying to save money on. We're doing this because we want to build a stable workforce around you that's going to allow you to actually do your job, because most of these people are not doing their job at this point. If you're really short on people, they're filling in for people constantly. You are trying to give them the opportunity to really build a team that they can actually start pushing forward. I always suggest adding 2 to 3 bilingual associates per shift, and honestly by department, because you cannot ever rely on one person to translate, because your production team will kill you if you do. Because the second that they are gone, you are screwed. And a lot of times the other reason why you involve partners is that, as I mentioned earlier, there's 7 different languages that are spoken in Myanmar, and a lot of times we'll see people bring in, they're like, oh, they're all from Myanmar, they totally could talk to each other. Well, it's like having someone who speaks French speak German. They don't understand that. And so having people that understand what languages your actual bilingual associates should be speaking, and making sure that you have enough of them so that if 2 of them are gone, you still can get production out the door without worrying about quality issues. Lastly, consistently ask for feedback and adjust as needed. Don't ever feel like you have to stick with people. I think part of where this comes up more often is working with folks with disabilities, because everyone feels a little bit poorly if they bring someone on and it's not a good fit. And I'll see people tend to hang on to people who are clearly not a good fit. And I always try to encourage them, no, don't do that, because what you're doing is you're teaching your team that these are the people you're going to get from this population. They're never going to be good fits. They're never going to work out. And so instead, if you turn the page and go, okay, this person, it's not a good fit for them, because it's also really stressful for the associate in that situation, then you can bring someone on that's actually going to be an effective part of your team. It's also really important to get the feedback from the supervisors and the people that are interacting with them on a day-by-day basis, because that way you can tweak your process and stuff like that.
Great, yeah. Thanks, Katie. Yep. So now we get to the point where I'm really excited. I wanted Katie to set the stage, because ultimately at this table there's roughly a couple thousand employees in the respective manufacturing facilities to my left. We want to talk about practical applications of what is being used today, so that people can say, all right, how can I maybe think about going through a different workforce here today for my respective organization? So I'm going to do my best to keep us all on task and ask a couple questions. I'll just go from my left to right with a couple questions on the start. Katie set the stage. What motivated you? I'll ask the question here, and Katie, I'll let you go first. What was the motivation to expand? What said we need to go beyond the quote-unquote traditional workforce?
Yeah, so I think the biggest reason why we tapped into it initially was because so what Rely does, which actually we should highlight
Yeah.
which company first.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry about that.
I did. Oh, you got it, you.
Yeah, no. So
Sorry.
Mark, why don't you talk about Husco, just so that everyone understands what.
Yeah. Husco, located over in Waukesha, we manufacture a lot of electromechanical devices for OEMs, mainly Ford, Chrysler, GM. And we've tapped into alternative workforces and diversity groups based out of need. Really, that's where it came from. We started probably about 8 years ago with individuals from Myanmar and Burmese population, and actually at the time didn't really even know it. And I'd like to say it's just because that's kind of how we had operated. And once we realized what we were doing, then we started to embrace it and made some changes. So it was pretty bumpy to begin with because it was kind of accidental. And then a couple of years ago, we started working with groups from Afghanistan as well, which is a little bit different scenario. Is well planned and kind of prepared for just as a second or even third go around. And also just with the climate at the time, with people leaving from Afghanistan due to the war and everything else that was going on. So that one went a little differently, but we'll elaborate on that, I think, a little bit later.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Jim. if you wanna go.
So our company is located in Appleton, Wisconsin, called Fox Valley Elevator. We manufacture residential elevators as well as commercial and residential dumbwaiters. We have a full-blown metal fabrication shop, a wood carpentry shop, as well as an electrical paneling and wiring shop. What really stuck out to me is having the pleasure of dealing with neurodivergent and the different cultures in past experiences. Going into Fox Valley Elevator, I just saw it as a good fit for some of the good habits and the work ethic that was brought by those cultures. I saw as a good fit for Fox Valley Elevator.
Yeah, so it was a good cultural fit
Yep.
for you too. Yep. And then I'm from Rely Contract Manufacturing, and so what we focus on is we focus on the value-added services and the secondary operations that manufacturers' customers ask them to do, but is not necessarily in their wheelhouse. So we do simple things like third-party sortation, all the way up to building high-complexity wire harnesses that take 20 hours to build from scratch. And so we have a very, very diverse product line. And so the main reason why we brought it on is because a lot of not the wire harnessing so much, but a lot of the kitting and bagging, the third-party sortation, packaging, POP displays, there's not a huge margin on that. And so we wanted to be able to, and these are also highly manual tasks that you a lot of times struggle to automate. And so we were focused on how can we bring out a workforce that we can build around, retain, and actually grow.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I'll go back, and then I will just go to my left for this next question and have everyone here talk about when you brought in a new program, there's always bumps that happen. Maybe if you want to highlight a bump or two, just so that people understand the real application of what it means.
I think the largest bump was the cultural differences as far as I didn't know at the time, so having learned that now, but addressing with the supervisors, like for instance in the Burmese population, not looking somebody in the eye is a sign of respect, where in America we look at it as, hey, you're not looking me in the eye, I don't think you're engaged. So preparing the supervisors and the floor for things, the cultural differences that they're going to experience preemptively, I think is a big part, and that was huge to learn early on.
I think with the group from Afghanistan, one of the biggest hurdles that we overcame was really bridging between Burmese population, who are very prompt and on time and always reliable, and like day 3 that we hired on some of these individuals from Afghanistan. They came in and it was like, shift start time is 7. They came in at like 7:45, and we're like, guys, you're supposed to be here by 7. It's no problem. Right? It's okay, guys. We're here now. And so we had to explain, being prompt and being responsible and things. And then they got it, right? And so it's like just taking the time to explain, how different it is from maybe the environment that they had been in. And just understanding, who they are as people, really went a long way for us to work together like that.
Yeah, and I think our biggest hiccup when we first started to get used to, or the supervisor team used to the population, because our supervisors had not come from working with diversity populations. We had our first quality issue, and it was very funny. The associates all found out about this and were mortified to the point where they all thought they were going to get fired, even though the quality issue had nothing to do with them. It was our issue on the indirect side. They cared that much about it, and so by having our supervisor react the way he did, because he was mad at himself for setting them up for, or not setting them up better for success, he ended up sending the message to them that they should fear for their job, that sort of thing. And so it really made us think about how we're communicating and how we're reacting to when we have those hiccups on the floor, and how that impacts everyone, not just the diversity group, but also our traditional workforce as well.
Yeah, just to add to that, and something that Katie mentioned earlier, one of the things that sticks out in my world is when I hear of, the thing that Katie mentioned before, when we're talking about threats and the people that are coming in that might not be normal, and I'm using air quotes there, right? Like, Katie brought up a really important point, to have that honest conversation between production and HR. That's the bump that I see constantly. Our people are saying, hey, hold on, why are different individuals coming in? It's just having an open conversation, saying, as Katie said, we're trying to unlock a bottleneck. We're trying to bring out people to help do a part of their job that maybe isn't working, or maybe something that isn't effectively happening in the supply chain. That's the most important thing that I've seen in our clients' worlds. I thought to add on that. So, anyway, I want to focus a little bit more into Husco's world and Marc for a couple questions, if that's all right. And thanks for setting the stage, Marc, on what you're doing, and a wonderful partner in our world. So, one of the things that's important in your world is safety, right? Number one pushback that we hear when talking to HR people about bringing new people on, right? How do you handle safety, the training, and the language barriers that are occurring in your world? And what tools, visuals, cues are you using so that everyone is playing from the same playbook?
Sure. Yeah. With the automation that we utilize, the light curtains and things are pretty much universal. Equipment won't run if the light curtain gets broken or violated and things. So from that standpoint, it was fairly seamless. But in terms of the training and the work instructions and things that were added, we did do a lot of translations. It's very different even for this latest group from Afghanistan, where they speak Pashto or Dari. They read from right to left, so it's actually a mirror image from most of what you're used to. And the key there is to have a couple of different individuals that had arrived that can translate for English into Pashto or Dari, and are computer literate, and came with all these extra skill sets that we weren't even expecting, but we tapped into those once we get to know people, so that we could do a full conversion. And Missoula is one of the first guys that landed here, and he actually has an IT background. He's a network engineer from Kabul University. And he comes with his own background, but he sits down with PowerPoint and converts all of our work instructions, and did it a matter of a couple of hours for all the equipment that these guys are going to be running. Did the full translation and things, and really took care of it rather seamlessly. So there's other services out there as well. We do utilize a couple translation services, especially for like those HR conversations and performance reviews and things that we tap into as well. And so it's a nominal fee to have an annual subscription and have somebody live on the other end of the phone. So if any of those concerns come up, safety concerns certainly, performance reviews or HR conversations, we will sit down. Our supervisors are trained. They take out their phone, they dial up the number, and just have a conversation with that already tapped in as well, just to make sure that everybody's crystal clear. So even now, a lot of these groups, they speak pretty good English. In fact, it's been amazing. A lot of these guys came. They could speak Pashto. They couldn't read or write in Pashto. They didn't know how to write their name, and now they can read and speak English, and they can write English, so they can't, do it in Pashto. Now they can do it in English, and they almost don't want, the phone there. They don't want that other person. They want this one-on-one, and they try to kind of shy away from that, but we have to just walk them through, like, legally, right? We want to have that other representation there, but really, that's just the best way to handle it, is just have those resources available. And know it's going to be a little bit clunky, right? It might, a 5-minute conversation might take 7, 8, 10 minutes, because there's a little bit of translation in between. But you plan for it up front, and it's pretty seamless then.
Yeah, and I think you did hit on a good thing, because I see that with a lot of the populations, is that if you bring on folks from a community, they are invested in making the others successful, and so they're going to go out of their way to help their fellow folks that are from their countries because they've gone through stuff on their way to the U.S. And so they a lot of times will allow you to inexpensively, like you said, translate documents, create work instructions that are going to make their community more successful.
Yeah, and that's just another tie. I mean, Husco's brand is, I mean, most manufacturer individuals know of Husco, right? It's an inspiring story that I didn't associate Waukesha, Wisconsin, and being a major drawing force for that population for you to have that. That's really cool. I think, practically speaking, you know, the rubber has to hit the road, right? So production is an important part of your world as well. Let's talk about the production schedules and the facility policies that you had to accommodate based on the different cultures and ultimately their beliefs, right? Like Ramadan and so on. How did those impact the team and the production team?
They ultimately didn't. So we treat we have a saying, treat everybody with love, and this is from Quad Graphics. They say show up, but show up with love, right? Come to these communities and know and understand them. So actually, we're rather fearful at Ramadan's happened. What's going on? Nobody's going to be here for like a week straight. What are we going to do, right? And after we sit down and talk with these guys, a couple take vacation and put in like regular, other employees would do, and it's really no different. They have a prayer schedule. Their prayer schedule is flexible enough. They'll come in, they'll pray. We do have a little zone set aside on the floor. They have set up with maps. It's our multi-faith and meditation center. Anybody's welcome. They love when other people join them there, so that they're praying and other people are in their space as well. But they'll pray before their shift. They'll pray during their break. They'll pray after their shift, whatever it may be. They have the same break times, no more, no less than anybody else. The same level of accountability, no more, no less than anybody else. And so ultimately, once you have those initial conversations, it was virtually seamless.
That's really cool. I just knowing that companies can accommodate that. And I mean, there's 500 people about, right? Like that's a crazy ask to pull together from a corporation. One last question based on the world outside of production, right? So there's also, you have a technical engineering team, right? And how has the diversity in your world influenced production, success, innovation, communication across the company?
Yeah. I mean, I think in general it's made us more robust because you have to recognize, similar to Katie's example, things that we can do to support these groups are going to be good for everybody. And that does show through. And I will also say that, I mentioned Missoula before, the untapped potential that's there, right? This guy comes over from Afghanistan. He was one of the last people in the Kabul airport disabling the network, so when the rebels came in to take over, they had a useless network and they didn't have the communications, and he flew out on a plane and then landed in the US, right? And a couple weeks later, he walks through our door, and he's trying to learn our equipment and run it, and by day 2, I was trying to train him, and I try to run our equipment and kind of know what's going on the shop floor. He's elbowing me out of the way. I know how to fix this. Let me in there, Sir Marc. I will come and do this for you, right? So he just knew it and understood it and embraced it, and it's been amazing. He's progressed through a number of different roles. He's currently an automation technician, which is typically a two-year degree, like associate level degree from WCTC or someplace. He had all that background already. I mean, he's a degreed individual that has a degree from the Kabul University. So he already has a lot of that background, which is totally unknown. Right? He walked down on our shop floor expecting to be an operator, and within a couple of weeks, we had him elevated into a technical role as well. So and there's a couple different examples as well. Just the kind of that untapped potential that you talked about with the brazing and things.
Yep.
Thanks, Marc. We'll come back to you in a little bit. That's just really cool to see that you guys are doing some stuff, so you guys should be really proud. So, and I wanted you to show your shirt in a minute too, but we'll come back to that in a minute because there's some really fun stories in that. But I do want to talk to James for a couple minutes on his world over at Fox Valley as well. A little different spin on a different type of workforce for my first question. I want to talk about specifically about individuals with disabilities. So in your world, you guys employ individuals with disabilities. What lessons have you learned about creating an environment where those individuals can thrive?
I think the largest lesson from both the neurodivergent, working with people with disabilities, Second Chance, or even the other cultures, you get out of it what you put into it. The more you put up front into making your processes, your written instructions, your pictures, everything is as explanatory as possible, the better off you are in the end. I mean, I've had some of the situations with our workers with disabilities, creating the right environment for them, where the tools should be, making sure that that's laid out and identified, and making it as a simple as process as possible. I think we have a tendency to assume that people have the same amount of sense that we have when we're designing things, and we see even with the American culture, we still find a way to mess it up. So this gives us the ability to make it even more detailed, more very specific and process-driven for everybody, not just the person with the disability or the opposite culture or the different culture.
That's great. We'll get next question. Go into a couple of that stuff, those ideas. That's great, though. Appreciate that. Going back to let's go back a little bit of the Husco story too. With different non-English speaking populations that you guys are working with, right? Pushback we get frequently from customers exploring the non-English workforce is that they travel in packs, right? Herds, right? One calls in, someone's car doesn't show up, they're all gone for the day, right? If you've experienced that, if you can, showcase a couple stories on how that plays out in your world.
So early on, we did experience that, and there were instances where we would lose an entire carload of people. That was very early on. We promoted ESL. Obviously, the English is a second language. That was our ability to promote for promotions and things like that in some more technical roles. You needed to learn that. It also helped with the driving. Getting people into those classes, and it's not that people don't want to drive, it's the timing and getting acclimated with the environment that they're in. Once that happened, I mean, I'd say within 6 months, a good majority of the people were taking the English classes. We're working towards getting their licenses, and we had more than one driver. If one driver, for instance, was down or their car was down, there were multiple people that could pick up that and carry on.
And just think about that, practically speaking, as the VP of Ops, right? Like, is that you're working directly with your first, second shift lead, like to communicate that? Help me just understand that practically that's really interesting. Like, you're asking them to be present, right? And facilitate those conversations with those individuals that can't speak English.
Correct. So in every situation that I've been in, we've been able to identify a trainer. So we do a train the trainer or somebody that can translate. Identifying somebody that does have enough of an English background where we can communicate and come to an understanding. And then also working through having the visuals and the pictures or the parts and things where you can put your hands on it and show and talk with your hands and with pictures as well. That also benefits us.
The reason why I asked that question a little further is something that Katie highlighted earlier is just, if you have individuals that can speak a language or two, however, the picture instructions also speak to that. Like, we, in our world, we have it so that, as Katie illustrated, IKEA on steroids is a very important detail, step by step, like almost to a fault, but it's ultra detailed to showcase where you need to be. If people can't understand, I could give this to Katie, who can give it to Marc, and it can go down that line. So I just wanted to pick at that for a second, so thanks for that. Last question. Someone who worked on the front line specifically in a couple of different places, right? How difficult was it to effectively communicate and supervise? I want to just go a little bit further with that. Like, you had to be in the trenches on that.
So in the very beginning, kind of like what I touched on earlier, the cultural differences. So the eye contact or talking with your hands or movements and things like that. It took some getting used to. Learning from that, but from the most part, like I said, every group that we've ever worked with, people know some English, at least enough to start a conversation and to learn from each other. And then we learn what needs to be incorporated into the visual acceptance and the processes and things like that.
James, that's great. Thank you. Appreciate it. And the nuance in that is really important. Eye contact. Some people just feel like that's a disrespect. It's individual cultures. It's really, really important to recognize that. Katie, I'll go to you for some Rely questions next. Relative to the implementation and integration of putting in different types of workforces, disability, refugee, second chance individuals, what are the key elements that make an integration successful?
Yeah, I think probably one of the most important things, I kind of touched on it earlier, is just getting your team involvement early. it's really important that the team feels like that they're embracing it on the front end and that they were a part of the decision to bring on a new population, and it's not like you're just trying to shove it down their throat. It would be with any change, because the polar difference between involving people on the front end and them actually embracing the population versus them being very resistant and not trying to be helpful with folks, that is going to make or break your success. When we first brought on at the plastics company that James and I came from, we first brought on the autistic population. It was funny. We had these two older women who had been with the company over 30 years, who ran our rework department, and we could not get them to train a singular person in the entire facility because they were not going to do it. The second we brought in the autistic individuals, it was like they viewed them as their grandchildren, and they would have lunch with them, they would embrace them, and suddenly they were so much more willing to train everyone else too. And so it made a huge cultural impact on us, because I think it connected everyone back to, we are doing this to improve people's lives. We're doing this for the right reason. It reinforced our values as a company and that we actually do truly care about people. I think you'll be amazed at how many people have folks that have some sort of disability that they know, that are in their family, that are their friends, that sort of thing. And it is one of those populations that if you bring it on, it really does elevate your purpose in life and your purpose in manufacturing.
Full disclosure, Engauge and Rely are sister companies. There's a gentleman, what's the gentleman's name that comes up to me in the plant? Nick will come up to me and ask me about 30 questions in about 12 seconds. He's the best. And he asked me about my car, about my kids, my wife, and then he's like, okay, good, goodbye. I mean, just that extra care that we put into that speaks to me, and it makes me feel.
Well, what's crazy, he'll remember every single fact that you told him 2-3 years down the road. Now, if you would have judged him based off of what his disability is, what he's capable of, you would have thought he wasn't capable of anything.
Nothing.
And he has a mind like a steel trap.
Yeah, we're trying to build a theme here, and it's connectivity from top-down supervisors, and I'll highlight something else too, but I just want to highlight that one individual story because it speaks to me.
I was going to say one of the other things that we did, so it's been interesting because we have both the folks with disabilities and we have a heavy refugee population, and it's been very cute because the folks with disabilities eat lunch with the refugees a lot of times, and they're actually training them on Korean. So they're starting to speak Korean now, and it's because they actually feel like a family. And so how many facilities can you walk into where everyone is treating each other with a complete amount of respect and really truly view themselves as an extension of their family? You don't find that very often.
No, our Christmas party kicks ass because it's great food. Anyway, great food.
Yeah, you got great food too.
Sorry, I'm deviating. I'll stay on track. It's next question, and this is back to the theme: importance of involving supervisors and team leads back into the decision of bringing in an alternative workforce. How have you successfully won over people in Rely in our world who are against or saying, well, maybe do we need those populations? What have you seen? What have you done?
Yeah, it's amazing. So you can talk and talk and talk to try to convince people. If they have a really strong feeling, they're only going to change their mind if they actually experience it in person. And so where we've had really heavy pushback, and it's kind of where we first brought in the non-English speaking population, the plastics company on third shift, like I said, I had to go on third shift and be like, okay, listen, if I go on third shift with this population and I'm there with you, will you promise me that you will at least give these people a chance? If it doesn't work, I promise you that I'm not going to continue to try to place this population. But if it does work, we're both going to be very happy and we're not going to talk about this again. And literally 2 months after we had established that population, I almost had to bail one of the supervisors out of jail because he had gotten into a bar altercation down the street defending the associate's honor because there were people at the bar that were making racist comments to them. And this is from the guy who was borderline making racist comments himself when we were talking on bringing those people on, but he had never seen on third shift before people who actually wanted to be there, who were pleasant, who it wasn't like they were half their shift would show up half the time. These people were there every single day, and that's what made the difference. I could have talked to them till the cows came home. They needed to see the proof in the pudding when it actually happened.
Yeah, it's It speaks, that's for sure. Last question in your world, and then I want Marc to highlight a shirt here for a second. From your side, success with both individuals, with physical disabilities, cognitive disabilities, right? What types of positions do you see those individuals succeed in when they're in the world?
Yes. So one of the misconceptions with folks with disabilities is that everyone assumes that they're not very capable and that they can only do very repetitive tasks. And so the way that we realized that that was not the case is at the plastics company, when we brought on the autistic individuals, we would only put them on O-ringing. So where we brought them on, we made a lot of dipsticks, so oil gauges in your car, and we literally would just put them on O-ringing, that's where we put folks that have restrictions. So if anyone gets injured, you put them on there because it's boring as heck, and that will get them off restrictions faster. And so that was what we had initially just thought these folks were capable of. Well, we really quickly figured out that one of the individuals was capable of much more and was getting bored. We shifted him onto our pinning equipment, and he became one of our fastest pinners on first shift. And so it's not just anything that's repetitive, it's things that and like in that situation, he was very fast, but where I think that any type of folks with disabilities, it's the positions that have some sort of repetition, but it's where quality matters more than speed, because this is the group that is going to a fault, follow the process exactly how it's outlined. And so we have plans to start training the high-functioning autistic individuals on wire harnessing, because it is really critical that you put these harnesses together exactly how they're supposed to function, because if they don't, it can cause in some field failures that's not going to work out. Those folks' attention to detail and ability to follow it step by step by step is exactly what you want to lean into.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Katie. I have a couple questions here. Time is flying by, so I want to make sure we accommodate.
You can also ask if there's...
Yeah, for sure. But do you mind just showcasing what you guys practice and you preach? I love this shirt to no end. I want everyone to see it for a second.
This is shortly after we started onboarding some of our individuals from Afghanistan. We started listing, and this is grown since, but this is shortly after we had a family day for Husco. So we had all of the shop employees, office employees, everybody together having a big old party, I actually debated with our CEO over this, because I had this vision, how cool is this? And he already had shirts designed for what they're going to do for Family Day, right? And, by golly, it's his company. But I said, hey, look, here's what we need to do, and I want to do it this way. And eventually he's like, all right, go with it. So they printed up a bunch of these shirts. They've just been cool. So we can go down the list with all the different languages that are represented. Like I said, it's grown since then, but this is near and dear to all of our employees, because it says family in their language all the way down the shirt. And it's become kind of a conversation starter as well, and people wear them around, and well, what the heck is that? So it was fun.
Well, funny story, one of our supervisors actually came originally from Husco, and to this day still wears that shirt probably once a month.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I want to tie that together, just to go back to the theme that we're trying to build. It's connectivity from genuinely like the frontline leaders on the shop floor all the way to the C-suite. Like that's what's important when you do things of like this, so that there's buy-in from everyone. We've had a lot of great conversation, a lot of pride up here, which is really, really important to highlight. So before I have a couple questions, does anyone have any questions for the panel here? I'm happy to open it up. Want to make sure we include everyone here. And if not, that's okay. I have some, but I just want to allow people the time. Please go ahead.
I'll start out with a question. When it comes to bilingual and ESL classes, we try to teach, or you try to teach, this language, the English language, to the non-English speaking groups. Do you ever go and target the English speaking to speak their languages?
That's awesome.
Because it seems as though we're getting more and more of these populations into our workforces. We're becoming like the outcasts. Not saying we are, but just harder and harder to communicate with our workforce.
I have yet to do that, but that's a very good idea, actually. I have a couple people I want to talk to about that. because I think they would be interested in that.
I think, and it's Brian, right? Brian, I think that's an important point. Like, that's an exact question that
really good
people will experience, right? Those are the production-like questions that are out there.
Yeah, no, we experienced some of that. It wasn't actually something that we had specifically started to sit down together and try to learn. But as they're learning with different instructions and things, it's naturally shared. And actually, there's a funny story with we talked with manufacturing some of the components, right? And a lot of our equipment or a lot of our valves utilize a solenoid, right? It's just a roll up of wire, but it's called solenoid electric. You know, you guys work with those too, I'm sure. And we're trying to do the translations for these, and I was like, okay, so translate solenoid. Like, solenoid. I said, yes, please translate solenoid for me. Yes, solenoid. I said, Missoula, come on, translate. Like, what was your word for solenoid? He's like, it's solenoid. Do you want me to call it solonada? Like, what do you want from me? You know? He's like, so there's that aspect where a lot of that terminology is common, and then they start kind of splicing their conversations together, and you'll see it flow in and out. And you know, now the last couple of years with these guys from Afghanistan that have worked on the floor, they learn a lot of their English from movies too. So they'll walk around the floor, and Mustafa is one of the individuals on first shift with us, and he'll come around. His favorite thing is, "Yo, what is up, man?" And he'll give like a fist bump. And we actually joke that like greetings now have turned into like this dance, because you'll like say hello, and they want to shake hands, and you fist bump, and you say like it's just starts to become like this full-on melting pot, to coin a term, I guess, but of all the cultures just kind of blending together. So it's been really neat. It's been really neat.
Well, and where I've seen it most effectively, I know Rockwell Automation has done this, where their supervisors have learned some Spanish, especially the ones that go down to Mexico, and it really does help with the folks that don't speak any English. And I think it's one where if your supervisors want to take that step, allowing them to do it at no cost to them is a really good way for you to show that you are really trying to make them as effective at their job as they need to be.
And I've worked with our supervisors too, that no one will stop in their tracks quicker than you come walking through and you'll say something, you know, and like, "Namaganoa," and that's a, you know, good job, right? And they're like, yeah, they'll freeze. I'm like, wait a second, what did you say? Like, it takes a while to register, like, you know, that you're starting to learn some of their language as well.
We did this presentation at WMEP months and months ago with a different client as well, and there was a closed door, for lack of better words, production meeting that happened, where conversation we're having just like you had, like, hey, we want to make sure we accommodate the people who are here as well. I mean it's important, because those are the types of conversations that have to happen to allow for workforces like that to work together. So that's a great question. I really appreciate it.
And something unique about your shirt is if you can't speak their language, you don't understand them, they don't want to. They don't want to have a conversation with you if you don't understand, if they don't feel they're part of a family. These people are, and I say these people, but this is how I'm saying it.
Yeah.
It's just they need to feel part, and if you don't understand them, they won't work with you.
Yeah.
At least that's how my world is with working with these others.
Well, and the other thing I didn't bring up is that, like, I kind of alluded to it earlier, the respect thing, is that if you treat these folks with respect, they literally will have friends and family members move from
Yes.
other states to
Here.
the area because they would like to work for your company. That's not something we can get from a lot of the other populations, and it's like they would like to retire from there. How many
Yeah.
people do you talk to that have been born and raised in the U.S. that are like, I would like to go to a company and retire there? That's just unheard of
And
now.
that's not like a glass door thing. This is like genuine culture that is conversation happening in their church, in their house, in their neighborhood. It's the opposite of a glass door. So it's a really important point. I got a couple more questions, but yeah, please. Absolutely. We have a couple more minutes, so go right ahead.
Thanks for being here. So about roughly 30% of the manufacturing workforce is women. Can you speak a little bit to
that's awesome.
this non-traditional population that you're working with and employing? Are you seeing that same sort of 30% percentage of women coming into your workforce? And if so, how are you addressing the specific needs of women in your facilities?
So and I can jump in on this one. So it's actually really interesting with the Burmese and Karen population. So a lot of times it's actually the reverse, where there's way more of the women that are actually in the workforce. I mean, there's a lot of the men, but like we just had one of our supervisors. So we have a supervisor and a material handler that are married, and one of them had to basically give up the job because they couldn't, their grandmother moved somewhere else, and so she was childcare before. Well, so we kind of assumed it was gonna be the female supervisor that had to go, nope, material handler, staying home, he's doing that part. And so I think it depends on the culture, and I think it depends on the manufacturing environment, what percentage are going to be female versus male. Yeah, I don't know if you've.
Yeah, no,
thoughts on that?
we've seen similar. Yeah, actually, if I reflect on that, far more. You know, it's somebody is I have to resign. I have babies at home. I have to watch, and that's typically you know, the husband for the Burmese population. But yeah. So we see the inverse. We do accommodations and things. You talk. For Burmese Karen population, generally a little bit shorter in general. Male and female, doesn't really matter. So we do have, you know, the typical things, right? We have steps, we have working heights, we have adjustable tables and things that we would have typically anywhere. But we've been a little bit more thoughtful with new production lines that we're launching, and specifically with our internal group that designs and builds automation equipment. It's kind of opened up their eyes to how to better service really anywhere, because you could have anybody that is 5 foot tall, right? It doesn't have to be a diverse population for that. But
The whole goal is to open up your funnel as much
Yeah,
as possible,
yeah.
so anyone can fill the
Yeah,
position.
right.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost at time. Happy to accommodate any more questions. If not, I'll end it with one more, unless anyone has a question. We have 5 more. Yeah, great. We have a couple more minutes. So, anyone else is good? Okay, great. I'll do 2 since I have a couple more minutes, because I do think these last 2 questions are important. First off, the easy one. What's the one, if people walk away, right, and it's what tool, visual instructions, bilingual trainer, mentorships, been the most effective tool in your organization?
You want to start, James?
I would definitely say the work instructions, the visual acceptance standards, especially in injection molding, it's a lot easier. This is a short shot, this is a gas trap. You can have all those parts laid out,
Yeah.
and you can make it interactive so that it can become a multiple choice. Now you show me which one's which and things of that nature. So it's a lot more interactive. You get to learn more of how that person sees it, and they get to learn more of how the company or how that's identified.
That's great.
yeah, I mean, I think we experienced similar with the automation and things. I was going to start with, I mean, a strong team ultimately.
Yeah.
Really, and it is fortunate. We had a little bit more foresight with landing the group, but we came from a place of, you know, which 6 to 8 machines am I going to not run tonight because I just don't have people here. And we had about 2 weeks of prep time saying, hey, these populations coming from Afghanistan, we don't really know exactly what it means. Let's quick Google search and do all the things that we can do to figure out how to help support this.
Where
and we
was
had about
ChatGPT
2
when
weeks.
you
Right,
needed it?
right.
We had about 2 weeks to plan. But we really just got down together in a room, like you said, and got all the awkward questions out of the way. And there's a team at Husco that just understands and buys into that culture and knows the importance of it and will embrace it. And so they understand the bigger picture and will embrace it. And
Well,
they
and has seen
find
it work
ways.
before,
They've
too.
seen it work before. They find ways for it to be successful rather than find the excuses to run away from or say, yeah, it's not going to work, right?
And from what tool for you? What would
Yeah,
you pick?
I would probably say picture work instructions,
Yeah,
although
that's-
one of the other really effective communication tools that I've seen work in other facilities is if you have one that you have badges that people are scanning in and out of, putting a card on there that has like the English word, the word in their language, and you can even have 3 of them to where it's like break or it's quality issue or that sort of thing, where they can go over to supervisor even if they don't know what it is and point to what it is, and the supervisor will go, oh, okay, that's what that means. Okay, yeah, no, go over there, sort of a deal. It just helps them give a cheat sheet even if they don't speak the language, to still be able to effectively communicate.
That's great. And the last question, and I'll start, unexpected benefit. So as I work in Engauge, and I work with Katie alongside Rely, the benefit is there's a connectivity that if it's done right, you can't replicate. I walk into our business, our building every day, and I wish I could see all the flags that we represent in our building. It's an inspiring thing to see, just from my perspective, and if anyone needs any input, everyone's card's gonna be up here, connection, I'll be at our booth as well, but James, maybe I'll start on you and just can work down, like, is unexpected benefit, what's the number one unexpected benefit that you would say?
Camaraderie.
Yeah.
Definitely the team aspect, the when people really realize the good that you're doing to help people become accustomed and be employed and work on their future. I think that definitely the team dynamic.
Yeah, it's a sense of camaraderie, the recognition that we treat everybody the same and hold them to the same standards, no more, no less than anybody else. And so a 30-year employee is going to get the exact same type of treatment and love and respect as somebody who walks through the door on the first day. And seeing that propagate throughout the entire business has really helped form a deeper sense of community. We're all in this together.
Yeah, I would say, like, yes, culture is a positive benefit, but forcing you to document your procedures and your processes to the point where anyone can do it is without a doubt the number one positive I think that comes out of it, because you will be a better company across the board regardless of if you do this on the front end, you end up, this is not the workforce that we want. Even if you pivot back to a traditional workforce, you are going to have set up those traditional workforce folks to be that much more successful on your product.
And that ties us back to a better bottom line, right? That means production can pick up at any point. I thank everyone for carving out a couple minutes just to learn about this crazy world. On behalf of the three up here, we'll be here for a couple minutes after this. I'll be at our booth as well. And just thanks for carving out the time to learn about a different way of doing work. Thanks, everyone.